Welcome to Pavo Real June Masterclass, World Creation and Design for Fiction Writers. It works for memoirs also.
I think the absolute biggest mistake a creator can make when they're building a fictional universe, it isn't like drawing a geographically inaccurate map.
Right.
It's actually making the world too perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, the machines in the Matrix actually learned this the hard way.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Because their very first attempt at building a simulated reality for humanity was this, like, flawless, pain-free utopia.
Ow.
And the system just completely crashed. Entire crops of humans were lost because the human brain literally rejected a reality that didn't have any inherent struggle.
It's such a brilliant piece of meta commentary by the Wachowskis, and it strikes at the absolute core of what makes any imaginary setting feel real to us, Human beings simply do not know how to exist without conflict. We are deeply, deeply suspicious of perfection.
Which is exactly why you are here with us for today's deep dive. We're going on a mission today to isolate the secret sauce behind the most captivating fictional universes.
Yeah, we really are.
So whether you are an aspiring author trying to figure out why your massive sci-fi manuscript feels, kind of flat, or you're just a lifelong reader wanting to understand why certain fantasy worlds keep you tuning pages until 3 in the morning, this analysis is going to completely change how you look at storytelling.
It really is. And we are pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources today to do this. We're using a foundational overview of world building from a French Wikipedia entry just to establish how the industry traditionally views the subject.
Right, getting the baseline.
Exactly. But the real engine of our discussion is this masterclass presentation by David R. Slayton. So he is a history major whose academic focus is actually the decline and collapse of ancient civilizations.
Which is a cool background to have.
It's amazing. And he applies that macro-level historical perspective to fiction, as he's the author of the urban fantasy novel White Trash Warlock.
And Slayton's core thesis here completely flips conventional writing advice on its head. I mean, if you ask most fans of speculative fiction what world building actually is, they'll usually point to, like, the appendices of The Lord of the Rings.
Right, the languages and the lineages.
Yeah. They think it's entirely about inventing these complex mythologies, detailing out trade routes, creating constructed languages with, 12 different verb tenses. But Slayton argues that the real secret to a gripping, believable world has almost nothing to do with how much lore you add to it. It's actually about finding the world's fatal flaw.
Yeah, and to appreciate how radical that shift in perspective is, we kind of have to understand the traditional baseline first. The Wikipedia definition we pulled outlines world building as this massive, meticulous elaboration of an imaginary setting.
It sounds exhausting, honestly.
It really does. It's this exhausting top-down or bottom-up process of cataloging flora, fauna, fictional economies, all of that. And Slayton observes that newer speculative fiction writers, eager to prove their world is real, they fall straight into this massive trap here.
The overwriting trap.
The overwrite, yeah.
And of writing encyclopedias instead of actual stories.
Yeah.
So you get these massive, bloated manuscripts stuffed with, like, unnecessary lore drops that read like a textbook for a history class you never actually signed up for.
And no one wants to read that.
No. It's an incredibly common reason publishers reject manuscripts, because the word counts just become astronomical. But more importantly, it just bores the reader to tears.
Right, because when a creator tries to highlight absolutely everything in their universe, they end up highlighting nothing. The narrative focus just gets entirely lost in the weeds. So Slayton's antidote to this bloat is, well, it's surgical. He says you need to narrow your world building down to a single, incurable, fatal flaw.
Just one flaw.
Just one. And this flaw needs to be the central humming engine that drives literally all the friction in your universe.
It makes me think of looking at a heavily filtered Instagram feed. Like, if an influencer's photos are perfectly lit and their house has zero clutter and their life seems totally frictionless, your brain instantly flags it as fake.
You don't buy it for a second.
Exactly. You reject it. A fictional world needs a pervasive, unfixable problem to anchor the reader's sense of reality.
And Slayton refers to this anchoring effect as verisimilitude.
That's a great word.
It is, right, which is essentially just the literary concept of something feeling deeply authentic because it is fundamentally recognizably broken. He points out that even the wealthiest, most insulated people in our real world, they still fear death or disease.
Right.
They possess a fundamental problem they simply cannot buy their way out of. So your fictional world needs an infrastructural equivalent to that. The fatal flaw is the rot in the foundation that no character, no matter how powerful they are, can just easily fix.
Okay, so if I'm staring at a blank Google Doc, my first instinct is to pull from my own real-world anxieties. Like, do I just take the news, the economic tension, the geopolitical strife, and paste that straight into my fantasy novel?
Slayton actually encourages starting exactly there.
Wait, really? Just copy the news?
Well, sort of. He suggests looking closely at the sociological implications of human history. The most effective fictional flaws are usually grounded in historical realities. So things like extreme resource scarcity, systemic prejudice, gaping income inequality, or religious persecution.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and his practical advice for writers is to get a library card, pick 3 seminal books in your chosen genre, and dissect them chapter by chapter. You want to see how the prose integrate these historical frictions into their specific magical or, futuristic settings.
But wait, isn't there a danger here of just writing a depressing mirror of reality? I mean, if the whole point of picking up a book about starships or dragons is escapism, why would a reader want to wade through the exact same systemic miseries they're trying to escape from after a long day at the Burke?
That is a phenomenal tension to bring up, and Slayton tackles it directly. He is absolutely adamant that creators must strike a delicate balance here. Finding a fatal flaw to achieve verisimilitude does not obligate an author to copy and paste specific real-world trauma into their book just for the sake of being edgy.
Right.
He vehemently pushes back against the trend of writers insisting they must include highly traumatic elements like, gratuitous sexual violence or intense, targeted homophobia under the guise of it being quote-unquote historically accurate.
Yeah, the classic Game of Thrones defense like, oh, it's a medieval setting, so it has to be brutally traumatic to be authentic.
Precisely. And Slayton's counterargument dismantles that defense beautifully.
Hmm.
He points out that literal fire-breathing dragons did not exist in real medieval history either.
Right.
Magic spells did not exist. So the appeal to historical accuracy in a secondary fantasy world is just a complete fallacy. If you are not writing literal terrestrial historical fiction, you have absolute permission to leave those specific, exhausting real-world traumas completely behind.
So you can invent entirely original, bespoke problems for your characters to face.
Exactly. This allows your readers to escape the specific fatigue of reality while still providing them with a structurally sound, deeply flawed universe that feels emotionally true.
I love that distinction. You want the mechanics of a systemic flaw without necessarily triggering the specific real-world fatigue. So let's look at how the absolute titans of the publishing industry execute this. Slayton uses some blockbuster case studies, and I think to really see how this works, we should group them by the types of flaws these authors employ.
That's a good idea.
Let's start with environmental hostility, like Frank Herbert's Dune.
Oh, Dune is the masterclass in environmental flaws. The fatal flaw of that universe is extreme resource scarcity. On a planetary level, it's the total lack of water on Arrakis, and then on a galactic level, it's the extreme rarity of the spice melange. But Herbert doesn't just establish that it's dry and then move on. The brilliance is how that scarcity forms the architectural foundation of the entire Fremen culture. Because water is so impossibly precious, their religious rituals, their political hierarchies, their combat, and even their daily social etiquette revolve entirely around moisture preservation.
Right, in Dune, simply shedding a tear for the dead is like the ultimate political and spiritual sacrifice. The environmental flaw dictates the sociology. And you see a similar mechanical approach in N.K. Jemisin's The Fifth Season.
Oh, absolutely.
The flaw there is an inevitable cyclical climate apocalypse. The world is literally breaking apart all the time. And because of that terrifying environmental reality, human society has calcified into these incredibly rigid, unforgiving caste systems just to ensure basic survival. The environment forces the culture to be brutal.
Exactly. Now, compare those environmental pressures to worlds built on strictly sociological flaws. If we look at Harry Potter, the casual reader might assume the main problem in that universe is Voldemort.
Sure, he's the big bad.
Right, but Voldemort is just a symptom. The actual fatal flaw, the systemic rot of that world, is the deep-seated prejudice and systemic bigotry between purebloods, half-bloods, and Muggleborns.
Or look at Cassandra Clare's Mortal Instruments series. The driving friction there isn't an evil Dark Lord either. It's intense class tension and elitism, based entirely on a rigid hierarchy of who possesses more or less angelic blood. The flaw is just baked right into the social fabric.
And if we synthesize the core lesson from all of these examples, a really profound, non-negotiable rule for world building emerges. The fatal flaw must survive the villain.
Wow, okay. Say more about that.
Well, the villain is often just the person who figured out how to best weaponize the flaw, right? So you might defeat Voldemort, but the institutional prejudice that allowed him to rise to power in the first place, that still exists in the Ministry of Magic.
That structural permanence is what makes the world feel like it actually has history. The flaw just, slinks back into the shadows after the climax, waiting to infect a completely new generation of characters decades later.
Yeah, and Slayton points to Star Wars to illustrate exactly that mechanism. The Rebel Alliance wins, the Emperor is thrown down the reactor shaft, and the immediate antagonists are dead.
Party on Endor.
Right. But the underlying societal flaw of the galaxy, its vulnerability to fascism, its bureaucratic corruption, its desire for authoritarian order that remains entirely intact. And that inevitable sociological flaw is what gives rise to the First Order in the sequel trilogy.
The world is bigger than any single character's lifespan. I get it. But let's bring this down from the galactic scale to the ground level, because a massive, world-spanning flaw is totally useless if it's just hovering in the background like a painted theatrical backdrop. It has to physically touch the people living in the world.
It has to have an impact.
Yeah, we are essentially talking about trickle-down flawnomics here. The macro world building has to dictate the micro-character interactions.
Trickle-down flawnomics is exactly it, because if you look at the economy of a flawed world, you have the privileged at the top hoarding the benefits of the systemic flaw, and you have the marginalized at the bottom paying the tax on it. And Slayton emphasizes that every single character must have a definable relationship to the fatal flaw, even if they aren't consciously aware of it. He maps this brilliantly using the Harry Potter cast, completely bypassing the obvious hero-villain dynamic to look at structural power instead.
Let's map that out for everyone. So the bottom of that economy, you have the victims. Hermione Granger pays the tax of her world's flaw every single day. Her immense talent doesn't shield her from being the target of systemic barriers and vicious slurs.
Then you have the empowered. Draco Malfoy is directly empowered by the flaw. He hoards the privilege it grants him and actively weaponizes it against others. But it's not just the immediate rivals who benefit.
The enablers.
Yes, the flaw empowers bureaucratic enablers like Dolores Umbridge. She uses the systemic prejudice to consolidate political power while hiding behind the law. And then you have the enforcers of the status quo who don't even realize they are enforcing it.
Like who?
Like the Weasley family. They are part of the pure blood system, but are ostracized as quote-unquote blood traitors because they refuse to leverage their inherent privilege.
And sitting right in the middle of all this is the most interesting category, the highly privileged, Harry Potter himself. Slayton points out that, structurally speaking, Harry is essentially magical nobility. I mean, he's famous, he's wealthy, and he's a highly regarded pureblood. Systemically, Harry actually benefits from the world's flaw.
He really does.
If he wanted to, he could easily coast through life and never actively fight the prejudice because it doesn't directly target his blood status.
Which leads Slayton to a crucial writing mechanic regarding character agency. There is this classic storytelling trope called pet the dog or kick the dog, which is typically an early scene designed to establish a character's core morality.
Like saving a cat in a tree.
Exactly. For Harry, his defining early moment isn't just about being a nice kid on a train. When Draco Malfoy offers Harry his friendship and Harry rejects it, Slayton identifies this as massive structural foreshadowing.
Think of the fatal flaw like gravity. Even if a character is totally oblivious to the physics of gravity, it is constantly pulling on them. It dictates how they move, how hard they fall, how much energy they have to expend just to walk up a hill. When Harry rejects Draco's handshake, he is actively fighting the gravity of his world. He is rejecting his inherent systemic privilege and choosing to do what is structurally difficult over what would be incredibly easy for him.
It's just an incredible piece of character work, and it's entirely disguised as a simple plot point. And Slayton makes sure to note that this exact same gravity applies just as heavily to the antagonists. The most compelling villains in speculative fiction aren't just twirling their mustaches and being evil for the sake of being evil.
Right.
They are reacting to the world's fatal flaw.
Oh, Magneto from X-Men is the perfect example of this.
Exactly. Magneto is a Holocaust survivor reacting to a universe fundamentally flawed by violent prejudice against mutants. Or Thanos in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he is reacting to the terrifying math of extreme universe-wide resource scarcity.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Their extreme, horrific actions are direct, logical responses to the specific infrastructural flaws of their respective universes. They genuinely believe their catastrophic solutions are the only way to fix a reality that is incurably broken. It gives the villain a terrifying amount of structural empathy.
Okay, but if we build an entire universe around a massive, incurable, systemic flaw, and we force all of our characters, heroes and villains alike, to suffer under the crushing gravity of that flaw, don't we run the risk of the story just becoming completely exhausting? If I'm reading a fantasy novel where every single person is miserable, the sky is raining ash, and everyone is eating gruel, my brain eventually just numbs out.
It causes emotional fatigue in the reader.
Yeah.
And that danger brings us to the final, crucial element of Slayton's world-building framework, the absolute necessity of contrast. So, Slayton is highly critical of a subgenre known as grimdark fantasy.
Oh yeah, where everything is just awful all the time.
All right, worlds that are so relentlessly bleak, cynical, and oppressive that all hope is completely extinguished from the narrative. He argues that a world that tilts too far into absolute darkness fails the verisimilitude test just as badly as the perfect utopian Matrix did. It feels mathematically fake. A believable world must be painted in contrasting shades.
To hammer that point home, Slayton drops this incredible, haunting quote from Neil Gaiman's Sandman comic series. He writes, "What power would hell have if those imprisoned here would not be able to dream of heaven?"
Wow. It is a profound observation about human psychology and storytelling. Shadows literally cannot exist without a light source to cast them. If everything is just dark all the time, it's not a world. It's just a blank black canvas. So to implement this practically, Slayton advises writers to examine the extreme ends of their story's emotional spectrum. If you are writing an incredibly dark, oppressive scene, you must find a way to inject an element of striking beauty into it.
He uses the Hunger Games to illustrate this, right? The capital city is this terrifying, brutal, authoritarian nightmare that literally murders children for sport. But within that intense darkness, Suzanne Collins gives us the prep teams and the makeover scenes, these moments of vivid, excessive, almost hypnotic beauty and high fashion.
And that injection of beauty makes underlying darkness feel significantly more grotesque and real, because the reader has something bright to contrast the horror against. The opulence sharpens the cruelty.
And it works in reverse, too. If you're writing a scene that shows your fictional world at its absolute brightest, its most triumphant and luxurious, you need to let the fatal flaw creep in just enough to cast a shadow over the light. Like, imagine you are writing a scene featuring a beautiful, opulent royal banquet. The tables are groaning with roasted meats. The musicians are playing a beautiful waltz. The heroes are dressed in silk. But to ground it in reality, you show that the servants carrying the silver platters are gaunt with hunger. Or you have a tiny background detail where a kitchen boy is brutally struck for trying to steal a single piece of bread. Injecting that shadow into the light reminds the reader that the gravity of the flaw is still pulling on everyone.
It's about creating a fully three-dimensional reality. When a creator successfully combines an inescapable fatal flaw, an economy of characters who are structurally forced to navigate the privilege or oppression of that flaw, and a world painted in starkly contrasting shades of light and dark, a profound shift happens.
Yeah.
The creator stops writing a dry travel guide to a fake place, and they start simulating a living, breathing universe.
So, to synthesize the journey we've taken together today, we've learned that great world building is so much more than drawing jagged coastlines, detailing fictional trade routes, and memorizing made-up languages. It's really about anchoring your universe to a single, incurable, fatal flaw.
Exactly.
It's about understanding the trickle-down flawnomics of your setting, letting that systemic rot ripple out like gravity to dictate the specific lives of both your highly privileged heroes and your deeply sympathetic villains. And finally, it's about mastering the psychology of contrast, using light and shadow to ensure the whole thing feels achingly, undeniably real to the human brain.
And we want to leave you with the reminder that the analytical tools we've explored today aren't just for authors staring at a blank document. If you are a reader or a viewer, understanding the concept of the fatal flaw acts as a really powerful critical lens.
Oh, for sure.
It allows you to engage with your favorite books, movies, and video games on a much deeper level. You can start analyzing the media you consume by asking, who does this world structurally empower? Who does it systemically crush? And perhaps most importantly, this is a phenomenal framework for understanding the historical cycles and systemic flaws of our own real world. It trains you to look past the surface-level actors in the news and identify the underlying infrastructural conditions that gave them power in the first place.
Which leaves us with one final provocative thought for you to turn over in your mind as you go about your day. We've spent this entire deep dive analyzing how the very best fictional worlds are deliberately built around a single, incurable fatal flaw to make them believable to us. So if an alien author were sitting down at their desk right now, outlining the story of our actual real world, what would they write down in their notebook as our defining fatal flaw? When you look up from the geographical maps of our planet and observe the tension driving human history, what is the flaw that makes our reality believable?
In the El Paso library, writers gather round, have a reel they call us, stories to be found. Pens on paper flowing, ideas come alive, words that paint a picture, in our minds they thrive. Have a reel we gather here in the library's light, sharing dreams and tales so clear, words that take to flight. From fiction to our memoirs, poetry to prose, every line and chapter where imagination grows. Old friends and new arrivals, crafting every line. In the silence of El Paso, our spirits do align. Have a reel we gather here in the library's light, sharing dreams and tales so clear, words that take to fly. From fiction to our memoirs, poetry to prose, every line and chapter where imagination grows. Old friends and new arrivals, crafting every line. In the silence of El Paso, our spirits do align. Have a reel we gather here in the library's light, sharing dreams and tales so clear, words that take to flight. Library, writers gather round, have a reel they call us, stories to be found. Pens on paper flowing, ideas come alive, words that paint a picture, in our minds they thrive. Have a reel we gather here in the library's light, sharing dreams and tales so clear, words that take to fly. From fiction to our memoirs, poetry to prose, every line and chapter where imagination grows. Old friends and new arrivals, crafting every line. In the silence of El Paso, our spirits do align. Have a reel we gather here in the library's light, sharing dreams and tales so clear,